It's always nerve-wracking. It's always nerve-wracking.
Okay, hi everyone. We just did the bit of a shout out about safety. We are using our preferred names and pronouns, and this is a very triggering session. This is Sugar and Spice. This is Eros Coaching partnering with SG Rainbow. So what we do is we share our personal stories, and then we just discuss things around the theme of sex and violence today. The reason why we decided on this theme is because this month of November is Transgender Day of Remembrance and also International Day for Elimination of Violence Against Women. So we have decided to record this so as to make this available for sharing with the public. SG Rainbow, do you want to introduce yourself? So I'm Martha. I'm a relationship counselor, clinical sexologist. SG Rainbow.
Nish, do you want to do the intro?
Hi everyone. So my name is Nish. I'm one of the program coordinators of SG Rainbow, and one of the lead initiatives, one of the person who initiated the collaboration with Dr. Mata to help with sex education and talking about very sensitive and triggering topics. SY.
So I'm SY. I'm the research lead for SG Rainbow. So to expand a bit on what Nish mentioned, so earlier in the year, we actually did kind of like a small survey amongst our LGBTQ community, and we realized that there seems to be this big knowledge gap surrounding quite a few specific topics relating to sex and sexual well-being and sexuality. So Nish and myself, alongside our other SG Rainbow executive committee members, we decided that it would be very helpful to actually have this kind of like awareness sessions with the community to learn more about this topic. And Dr. Martha was super helpful in terms of like working with us and collaborating with us and hosting all these Sugar and Spice sessions. And we've also decided to actually continue recording all these sessions just so that as in more people will be able to access these topics and recordings even after the events itself. So thank you, Dr. Martha, for making this even possible for this entire year, or at least the second half of this year. And we will, I guess, now tackle this very heavy topic of sex and violence for today.
Yeah, so
Yes.
what we do is we share our personal stories. So there are many, many, many stories as a person with vagina that I can share. So I don't want to make it too heavy. So I just want to say that from a very young age, I realized being in a female body is scary and dangerous. I get people wanting to follow me and befriend me. Like when I came of age, like maybe I'm 12 or 13, I start to develop boobs. I also had my menstruation quite young. So yes, I matured quite early. And so even just walking down the streets, you have people looking at you, having a double look. And these people are like easily 10 years, 20 years older than you, looking at you, staring at you, and following you. And back then, there were actually people who will come up to you and say, 可以交朋友吗? Can we be friends? And I would just go into freeze mode because I was young and I was emotionally immature, and we didn't have sex at all. So I guess one particular story that I want to so many stories. One particular story that I want to share is I was also being molested quite young, actually. Okay, just to share that particular story, and then I have other stories, but so I was at Popular Bookshop, and there was this guy in red shorts who actually grind his penis on my erect penis on my butt, and I was like in freeze mode, and I was 11. I didn't know what to do, and I didn't go back to that particular Popular outlet for like a year. And then the next year, when I did go back with my friends, thinking it was safer, again, I bumped into the same person who did the same thing to me. And I wanted to leave, but my bags were together with my friends. Back then, you actually put your bags at the counter. And so I was trying to wave at my friends to like come because I want to leave. But they decided to play hide and seek with me. And so I was so angry, but at the same time, I was feeling like stuck, and feeling unprotected and unsupported by people who didn't realize at that very moment I was actually being molested, and I didn't want to tell them, I didn't want to burden them, I didn't want to make a case, I didn't want to file for police report and things like that. So even at a very young age, I already was conditioned to be silent and not be a bother and like disturb or distract other people. I will have to share that I have also been raped before, even this year. There was this guy I was with, and on the second date came back to my place, and I was prepared to make out with him, but I was not prepared to have sex with him. And the moment we got to my place, he just started to grope me. And I said about 30 no's, stop. I said about 30 of them before he actually stopped. And then I got scared that he would be offended that I say stop. And he said, yeah, you want to stop? We stop, like this kind of like flippant way. And I just kind of like went into this good girl mode, like, oh, I don't want to offend him. Oh, but I do like him. And so yeah, very triggering. So yeah, we ended up having sex, but it didn't feel good. It didn't feel good that why did I have to say 30 stop before you stop? And so I realized this person is not safe, and I did have consensual sex with him, but everything else before that, all the groping was not. And so then I just like, I don't feel safe with you. I don't think I want to see you again. Okay, there are other stories, but I don't want to go into it. Yeah, so I think that's all from my stories for now.
Thanks for actually being so vulnerable with us, Dr. Masa. It's very difficult. It's very difficult to go through everything that you went through, and none of that should have happened. None of that should have happened to you. None of that. And I guess I also want to make it clear over here, across this chat, as in like there is no right or wrong time to indicate your consent or retract your consent. If at any point in time your sexual partner says no and you force your way through, it is a form of sexual violence, right? As long as the other party has not consented to the sex at any point in time, it's non-consensual, it's sexual violence. So none of the things that you've experienced should happen to you, Dr. Mata. This is no. No. Okay. I'm just gonna open the floor up to anyone else who might be willing to share. If not, Nish or myself, we can also take the baton first if participants are not ready to share yet. I'll use about 5 seconds for anyone to unmute.
I'll speak.
Yeah, sure.
I think just like Dr. Mata, as a female, yeah, you get groped without permission. And I think it also has to do with the whole lack of sex education, that you don't know, and therefore you are curious, you think it's okay to touch. So I won't go into specifics about those, but there was one particular one that was striking because someone actually tried to help me. Other times it's always, like nobody helps you. This one, actually someone tried to help me. So and I'm already no longer a teenager by then, no longer that young and vulnerable. I was on the escalator and this foreign worker touched my butt because he was right behind me. So I turned around, stared at him, and then he was like, pretended like nothing happened. And so I was very upset. So when I got up to the floor, the floor where you tap out, right? I found what's it called? What's the station control person? And I told him someone touched me. The guy ran. He ran after the group of foreign workers to try to find out which guy touched me, because I pointed out that one touched me. He ran, he really ran. And I really appreciated that because he understood what it meant. He didn't just like, are you sure? Didn't try to question me first. Are you sure he touched you? Are you sure it's not accidental? He just take it as it is, charge for it. But Sunday, it's like a huge crowd. Weekend, so many people. He couldn't find a guy. And he felt very bad. But the fact that he did it for me was a huge deal. Because Singapore is full of the bystander attitude. So and now every time I take a train, I always see the advertisement, or rather that warning, it's an offense to be, I can't remember what the exact words, but I always see it at the escalator steps, and I always look at it, and it always reminds me of that guy. So yes, like what you say, anything without your consent is violence. Even if two of you so-called like each other, got naked together, sit in a bed together, if I said no at any one point of time, we may not proceed. That's just that. But some people think, oh, she's being coy, women are supposed to be coy. But no, maybe somewhere along the line we touched me wrong and I'm just not comfortable and I don't want to stop anymore. And we are not taught enough to say no with sufficient conviction to make someone stop. Some people will just, okay, I can still keep trying. Like, no is a suggestion for negotiation. This is what I think a lot of media teach. I think this is very, very lacking in education to our young. I think that's very important. I really don't know what sex ed is in Singapore. There's zero in my era. I hope for the new generation there is some better way of teaching. I mean, not just the proper names for anatomy, etc. Right? Even these things, these are all part of sex education, and they have meaning towards the way you live your life as well. It's not just about sex. So yeah, long ramble, but this topic is sensitive.
Yeah. So I want to say that, it's very easy to say, oh, we are teaching consent. Yes is yes, no is no. Maybe it's no. Consent can be withdrawn at any time. It's really easy to just say this, but we're at the heat of the moment, you say, yeah, but they were naked. Yeah, but she came to my place. What? Yeah, what? She he or she asking for it. So there's this whole thing around playing coy because of this whole thing around we're Asians, we don't know how to talk about sex. And then there's that frozenness, that stuckness of the words not coming out from the throat. Then there's all these like what Rectangle was mentioning, like people just not getting proper modeling from the media, because I think we see a lot that if you just keep trying, is considered passionate or romantic, like to stalk someone, badger them, keep trying until they say yes. So I agree that sex ed needs to be more than proper names, and we really need to sensitize people on the violence and the violation that people at the receiving end feels, so that they understand it's really, really not okay. And as someone who is conditioned to believe that, oh, I'm smaller, so what can I do if I'm in a situation where the guy wants to, I'm not going to let him hit me or hit my face or whatever. I don't want to. So yeah, you can be raped and you can not have bruises, and then to have people say stupid things like, oh, why didn't you fight them off? Did you actually, like, why did you not leave immediately? Things like that, like there's this good girl people pleaser in us that just don't want to rock the boat. So okay, I actually have another one. I remember there was once I was in a women's group and I actually shared how I was raped in another occasion, and I don't know what happened. I can't remember. I remember now. I froze, and the person was having external play, and I didn't know the person would just first of all, the person fingered me, and then later on, like immediately, like shove the penis in. So I was not mentally or physically, emotionally even prepared for that to happen, but it just like happened so quickly. But before I went over, I did tell the person no to sex. So anyway, I shared this in this woman's group, and then this woman came up to me and said, "You are a sexologist, right? How come you can also be raped?" Yeah. So there's this whole like, oh, sexologist is not a woman, or sexologist is holier than thou, or sexologist is whatever at a higher standard. And like, yeah, shit happens when shit happens. Okay, so I really need to stop. So how about the rest of you?
I was also going to add one more point, and I think thank you Dr. Martha and our previous participant for actually sharing. I think one of the things that I really wanted to highlight was actually the station control officer who actually stood up for our previous participant who during that moment of violation. I think that's something that as someone who holds a cisgender male identity, I wish more people who hold these kind of privileges can actually do. Because ultimately, in a lot of these kind of situations, it's that kind of bystander intervention that can really help, even if not catching the perpetrator, at least be a source of support for the person who just experienced this violation, the survivor who actually just experienced this violation, because it's only when the entire community works against this problematic phenomena that we can slowly try and make a change in our culture and our community. And the fact that the experience of violation amongst our women, the experiences of violation, how normalized it is amongst the women in Singapore speaks very loudly to what a prevalent issue this issue of violence is against women in our society. And I think it's not just a women issue. Ultimately, violence as an issue as a whole needs to be addressed, right? And sex ed is really the first step that we need to take. And like Dr. Martha and our previous participants said, it's just not enough is being done with respect to that. Okay, I'm gonna stop there, and I'm going to actually open up the floor again. Does anyone else want to share your story amongst our participants before if you are not comfortable, Nish or myself can also share our experiences.
And you also don't have to share if you don't want to. I think you all share lah, fast. We got a lot of things to cover in 1 hour, or actually like, less than half an hour now.
Can.
Okay,
Okay,
37 minutes.
Maybe I'll cover mine quickly and then Nish, I'll pass the baton to you. Is that okay? Okay. So for myself, I mean, my experience of violence has largely arose from dating apps, nothing new there. Right. So a lot of them were actually resulting from people who were not how should I put it, who are not honest with their identity, right? So the one that I can think of right now off my head would be a case where there is a person who sent me a picture of himself being around, I was abroad. He sent me a picture of himself like he was around, as if he was around 30. So I met him up. So the first wrong move that I probably made was to actually enter his car without seeing his identity properly, right? But it was like I was overseas, it was dark, it was winter, I couldn't really see anything that was inside. The first thing I did was actually send his license plate to my friend just for safety's sake. And when I entered the picture and the person didn't align, the person I saw was someone who was closer to his 50s. Not that there's anything wrong with the age, but is the fact that as in the picture and the person didn't match up that freaked me out. And because he was already driving off, there was no way of actually leaving, right? So it's just kind of like trying to calm the situation down, make sure that I don't aggravate him. So kind of just making small talk the whole way. He's talking about how like, oh, his partner was not around, right? And like it's okay for us to go and do it. And that was actually during the period of time where I haven't actually had a full sexual encounter yet, full being as in like a penetrative sexual encounter yet, right? So to me, I was like, shit, right? Here is someone who just scammed me online and then is insinuating that he probably wants to have penetrative sex with me, and I was definitely not ready in any sense. So from his car, where he parked at his garage, we kind of kept talking until the lift. I kept telling him, I don't think I'm very comfortable, I'm not sure. And he kept going like, oh no, it's okay, you'll be okay, I'll take care of you, we'll stop anytime if you're not comfortable. I was like, no. Went back to his car. Like eventually, as and I convinced him to not bring me back to his apartment. I was like, oh, it might not be good. Like I was finding all kinds of excuses, lah, right? It's like, oh, your partner might be back, he might hear, etc., etc. So he was like, oh, okay, let's just I'll drive you back to your place in that case. So we got into the car, and the first thing he did was started touching me, lah. Right. So it got to a point where he was touching me, he was groping me inappropriately, and given that we were in the car, the confined space of the car, there was or at least at that point in time, I felt like there was no way of running out. Then I kind of just let him, right? And physiologically, I know I was reacting. It felt wrong, but I kind of allowed it to happen anyway because I was like, if I don't give him the response that he wants, he's probably not going to stop, right? So, I think the end point, I know I blanked out towards the end, but all I remember towards the end was I know I opened the door, I ran out of the car, I left some of my belongings behind. I think it was just my cap at that time, so it wasn't too bad or something, or my glove or something like that. I just ran out into the freezing winter and then like went to the first public transport and just left as fast as I could. And I could still remember that he was still screaming for me. It's like, hey, what's going on? Why are you leaving? Right? But yeah, dating apps. Catfishes, yes, it's more dangerous than I think most people put it out to be. I know a lot of times people make it sound like, oh yeah, catfishes is just fake photos, right? No, right? It often evolves to be something more insidious, and like insidious, and these experiences and these issues stay with you for life, lah, right? So that's why I say that, and like violence as a whole is a societal issue. We need to tackle it. It's not just in Singapore, even abroad, right? Knowing how to take care of yourself and having that source of support. I had my friends who were there by my side when it happened, or at least over text they were there by my side when I told them what happened, and like they were able to kind of co-regulate my emotions and calm me down a bit. But yeah, so I would think that's violence of a certain form. Yeah, so that was mine. Sorry, that went a bit longer than I expected.
It is
Yeah,
violence.
mm. Hopefully it gives a more GBQ perspective because I know most of the conversations of sexual violence tends to occur in a more cis heteronormative form, and it's important because oftentimes the gender dynamics is still important when it comes to sexual violence. But I just want to acknowledge that even within the GBQ community, this happens as well. And yeah, my
Yes,
experience.
and before the 3778 is repelled, the fear of I'm doing something that is regarded as illegal anyway. So where can I go and report this?
Yeah.
Who will believe me?
I think that is the worst part of the entire experience. I didn't even think about the option of going to the police, whether it was overseas or in Singapore. It was just like that was not an option for me, right? To me, it's in like I'm outing myself by doing that. I am having to deal with the whole police procedure, and like it's just there's no such due process for justice, especially in the case of sexual violence among LGBTQ community members, which is thankfully as in like with the repeal and as well as the changing of the law in terms of sexual violence, as in it's a bit more inclusive now with that regard. But I don't think I would have the faith to actually turn to the police even until now. Yeah, because of the stigma and everything involved. Yeah. Okay, that's just me. I'm gonna stop before I blabber on. Nish, would you like to take the baton, or if anyone else would like to take the baton, please feel free to.
I think I'll take the baton. So just to keep the ball rolling, thank you, SY, and everyone else who shared. Thank you for trusting this space. Okay. So my experience is okay. So there's one really prominent one that comes to mind. So okay. So it was when I was 17 years old. I was gonna go watch a show, like a theater like show. So I went to like Tampines MRT, like the area, right? And then there's a cleaner over there. Like I see him around often. And I noticed that he's following me as I walk around like the area. And then so after I noticed, I was like, okay, this is weird. So and I really had to go to the toilet. So I was like, you know what, screw it. So I just went to the toilet and I closed the door and I did my thing. And when I opened the cubicle, I noticed that the cleaner was walking around the toilet, like looking for me. And I thought this was so creepy. So I just I ran out. So yeah, I guess that was just one very uncomfortable experience of someone stalking me that comes to mind. There was also another incident, completely unrelated. It was someone I met off a dating app. So we met online. Like I've actually always been like chatting online, but we only decided to meet after like a long while. So we met, and things started happening. I'm someone who's very sensitive, and I get uncomfortable very easily. So I told him to stop, but he didn't really stop. So it's, yeah, that situation happened. So I just I felt like so I just like, okay, whatever happens, happens. I'm just gonna like tahan, which shouldn't be the case, And it was very weird because after I told him I'm uncomfortable, he felt guilty, and I'm like, then I have to be the good boy, like, no, it's okay, don't feel guilty. I'm like, I shouldn't be doing this. like what? How are you making this situation about yourself? Like it's not cool, okay? So yeah, that happened. Yeah, I think those are the two more prominent stuff relating to sexual violence that happened in my life. Yeah, more or less.
Just because he's guilty doesn't mean that he didn't just sexually violate you.
Exactly.
Just because he felt guilty afterwards doesn't mean that your feelings at that point in time were not valid. Everything that you experienced was valid. If you said no, he shouldn't have continued. Not okay. Not okay.
Correct. Correct. Exactly.
Yeah, I think that there are people who will be like, oh, before I do anything, I just want to give them a chance to say sorry. Depending on their reaction, then I will decide whether to like do something about it, like file a report or not. But maybe that's our way of like giving them a chance, wanting closure for ourselves. It doesn't excuse the fact like what SY said is right or wrong. It's definitely wrong. And I also want to acknowledge those people who choose not to make a report, because of how troublesome it is. It doesn't make the trauma any less valid. And they really don't need to like feel accountable to anybody. I think one of the things about being in Singapore, the way we were brought up is there seems to be this belief that everything has its order, and everything needs to have justice, and everything is black and white, and this happens, so this is something that I must do. But the reality is you are also under no obligation to do anything in the name of social justice or justice. Just do what's right for you moment by moment, and to really think through like what actually do you want to achieve in doing a report. Is it you just want a record on this person, or is it you want to seek justice all the way? And what does that mean? Like, I think it's quite unfair to like go and file a report and then you don't know what is going to happen, and you didn't take it seriously, in the sense that now you have handed the case over to the police, and they are actually under obligation to also investigate. And the investigation, a lot of people do not realize, actually takes quite some time. And like, can you imagine like 1 year later being re-traumatized when the police calls you up and asks you to go down for like lie detector tests or things like that, which happened to me. So the re-traumatization, when you have already, you thought you already are okay, you filed the report, you have had closure, you have moved on, but then 1 year later, everything is opened up again. Yeah, that can happen.
Definitely. Also sharing the other perspective, I think to me as in like you can choose to file a report, you can choose not to file a report, you can choose to file a report at any time after the incident, even if let's say it's a year later, even if it's 2 years later, even if it's 10 years later, all equally valid. But I think what Dr. Martha said is very true and very important. It can be re-traumatizing. What's important is for you to do what would help you seek closure to the event, and what would best help you recover to the best extent that you can from the event. Because ultimately, as in like the justice system is built such that as in like just as much as there is the element of retribution, there are also other considerations in place like recidivism, recidivism, veterans, and other elements. And sometimes these other elements may take precedence over your recovery, at least from the perspective of the institution, or at least the law enforcement institution. So for yourself, you need to take into account, is this the best method to actually help me recover from the trauma that I experienced? Or would I actually want to seek something different? I'm especially thinking about the GBQ community when it comes to this, because the thing is that each time you go for investigation, you risk being outed again. You risk being there are all these other elements that you need to think about, right? Especially if you need to consider if they are even aware of some of the cultural implications of being in the GBQ community. I'm thinking of dating app convention. I'm thinking of issues of, let's say, things like technologically facilitated sexual violence. How does that look different between the cishet community as compared to GBQ community? All these very nuanced things that you may have to keep explaining to the police again and again and again, just because they don't have that knowledge or that cultural understanding of the sub community or the GBQ community. I just want to be very cognizant of the fact that yes, you can lodge a police report. You can lodge police report at any time, but what's important when you choose to lodge a police report is that it comes from the desire to help yourself recover and seek closure, not so much because, oh, that's the conventional thing to do. There's no conventional thing to do when this kind of incidences happen.
Yeah, so SY said it in a much more articulate way than me. What you exactly said, the conventional way of doing things. So we think we need to do things by the book, and in reality, maybe we are not psychologically, emotionally prepared for what is to come because nobody actually told us what to expect. So on that note, of course, I think a lot of you know about the Aware Sexual Assault Center and their helpline. Even though Aware services is targeted and publicized as for women, but actually they are open to supporting people of all genders. So they do have this befriender service where they will actually go down with you for medical checkup or go down with you to lodge a report. You need to be the one to talk through with them. So they have the helpliner, and then they have qualified counselors there as well. So yeah, I think as you all can tell, I did file for a police report and for one of the instances, and yeah, I got they were not trying to be like what SY said, they were not trying to be mean, but the police did ask some questions that was to further their education. And I don't appreciate being subject to being the one to have to educate the police on how come I didn't leave, like how come I don't have bruises, or how come how come I didn't say anything when immediately after it happened. Like, I go into freeze. People think that, wow, Mata is so strong, so bravado, but I actually have a tendency to go into freeze mode. So things like that, police ask you, and then 1 year later asked me to go for lie detector test. And to be very honest, I had buried it so deep I don't even remember the person's name. And so it didn't help me because they think I'm just like a joke. I'm just wasting their time, when in reality, it was what I needed to do to be able to function. I just had to bury it and just like move on, file, and to me that was the closure. So I wasn't prepared for it to open up again. And even though I filed a police report quite some time later, but it's protocol, I have to go for medical examination. So when I went for the medical examination, doctor asked me to say what happened, and it's like, how many times have I already repeated my story, and now I have to repeat it again. So by the time I went to the hospital, and this was like months later after it happened, but I still had to go for the medical examination, even though obviously there's nothing there anymore. I had already repeated my story 4 or 5 times. So I wasn't prepared to repeat that story again in front of the doctor. Furthermore, all the nurses were around me, like very curious. And I just broke down and cried because I was just mentally like shattered that I had to like relive it again, because in order to tell them, all the images will be in my head and all the emotions will come up again. So I'm not trying to deter people who want to file for a report. You need to do what's right for you. But I don't think enough people really know what it involves to do that, and whether that's the best thing for you, I think is what I'm trying to say. I think I'm repeating myself. So is there anybody else who wants to like share your story? Because we do want to give you an opportunity to share your story, and we have 20 more minutes left.
We'll give you about 5 to 10 seconds if anyone would like to take the mic. If not, I actually have some questions for everyone as well.
Also, you can private message us if you prefer, okay? If you have some comments you want to say to SY, to myself, to Nish, by all means, we are the go-to people.
We promise we are nice. Okay, so maybe I'll throw another question out, and I think this one is a very conventional question, but no one thinks about it enough. If I drank, or let's say I happen to have taken certain substances before, someone tries to ask me out for sex, does it constitute violence when, let's say, the person actually engages in sex with me, whether I consented or not? So substance-induced, state. Does consent exist in those instances?
Yeah, I think this is a great area because I do know of many clients who say they need to drink something to relax, and sex is better when they are drunk. So it's a great area because nowadays I think people are very afraid, like especially with Me Too and all that. They are very afraid, like they say yes, but they can always turn around and say no. So there are actually people even talking about having contracts written down. And in the world of BDSM, everything needs to be negotiated properly. Consent is very important, not just like wing it. So when it comes to drugs, it is very debatable because then the person can always choose to file a report later on anyway. But what happened recently, right, with the wife swapping case, the wives were drugged out and the husbands were actually letting their wives be raped by other men. So the wives were drugged out, that they are not capable of giving consent. So I think if you are intoxicated to that extent, or whether you are drugged to that extent, it's tough because the world will tell you they're tough luck, you shouldn't have done it. What do you have to say about that? Like I mentioned, not everything is justice. Sometimes it's like no point.
Anyone can take the mic. If not, Nish, do you have any thoughts?
No thoughts. Just yeah. Honestly, it's something that takes a lot more than 5 seconds to really like string a sentence, for me at least. For me, yeah. But if anybody has anything to say, just feel free to just type something or unmute yourself.
I'll just share like a 1 minute thought thinker based on the GBQ community line. Of course, anyone can feel free to chip in because the thing is, I know my experiences don't necessarily represent the whole GBQ community, but the sense is that with the carving culture, right, with the drinking culture, with certain specific streets being associated with the gay community or the GBQ community, as in like having alcohol induced sex has become so normalized that, as in like Dr. Mata said, it's a very gray zone. And what do you do if the drug or the alcohol or the substance that's being used is really one of the only ways of which they can actually enjoy sex, because that's what they're gotten used to, or that just happens to be their preferred mode of consciousness when they're having sex? I don't know. Because the thing is, as in, if you read Dr. Martha's definition, which is actually a very commonly used definition of sexual violence, technically speaking, alcohol or drug facilitated penetration constitutes sexual violence. Yet, if the person chooses to engage in sex because while being alcohol or drug induced, then what can people do, lah? So I guess with this kind of notion of using contracts to buffer, using contracts to be protect people's self, is one approach, lah. But I don't think for the GBQ community, I feel like for the GBQ community particularly, it's precisely because of how gray it is that whether something is sexual violence or not, people are finding it very hard to pinpoint. Right? Oftentimes it's a afterthought that you go like, hey, actually I never consented to this. So but I was drunk. So was I raped or not? Did I consent to this or not? Right? It's a lot of like just question marks going on, I feel.
Yeah, I want to say that consent is not just spoken, it can be also implied. If you know that the person is, and you can sense that the person is hesitant or scared or like undecided or not in a good space, like maybe example, like they just lost their job or they have depression or they have other mental health challenges, or like they are under the inhibition of drugs, like I think it's really important that we look out for each other and not be the one to perpetuate more harm. So yes, they may say it's not violent. Yeah, it's my lifestyle. Yeah, like fuck me, whatever. They say certain things, but are we actually as a person of that mindset of I don't want to do any harm to anyone? So even though they say it, maybe they're saying it at the heat of the moment, I'm not going to do it. Like you calm down, we have a chat, and then I might do it, but not now, later on. Like being able to care for that person to that extent, because you can say, oh yeah, sex, oh yeah, I like taking from other people versus like giving pleasure. So the intention, I think, is a big part of it. But having said that, sex and violence, having said that, there are people who are not capable of reading those innuendos. My clients on the autism spectrum, for instance, they just can't read these cues as well as other people. And so it's much harder for them to navigate this. And also you may have a partner who doesn't know that they are not as sensitive. And so I think that is the whole point of like dangers, the unspoken dangers of the hookup culture. Just meet someone and immediately go and have sex with them, but not realizing like certain things about what they're going through in their present life, or certain like conditions that they have. They may not disclose. People say, let's say for instance, someone who claims that they're single but actually is married. Is that violence? Like psychologically, it fucks you up, because you are hoping for maybe like, we everything went so well, we had a rapport, and you're hoping for a relationship from this. But to me, this lying and cheating, like get what you want, take what you want, is that also violence?
Before we enter the big topic of, I think I actually want to cover this topic as well, sex and violence happening within intimate relationships, but I want to spend some time on that in a bit. But before I actually enter that, I want to echo what Dr. Martha just said. This whole idea of detecting in like behavioral cues, detecting and just caring about the person as a human being. So one of the things I remember about one of my sexual partners saying is that he was like saying that, oh, like you are one of the few sexual partners, or potentially even the first sexual partner that I've ever had, that actually takes care of me during sex. And I'm kind of like, what do you mean? Like, all these while people have just been treating you like a piece of meat. And I'm concerned, because that seems to be the phenomena that's going on, especially with hookup culture. People are treating each other like meat pieces without actually realizing that each of them have feelings. They have the ability to consent. They may not be comfortable in certain things. They may be sending out behavioral cues but not necessarily verbalizing it. And the other party might just not be caring because they are high on hormones and they just want to fuck and go. Right. So I mean, echoing what Dr. Martha has just said, there's this need to change mentalities even within hookup culture, just treating the other person as a person, taking care of the other person, and just building a more not just sex positive, but also just caring community as a whole in Singapore, so that people don't have to constantly worry whether the next person they meet for a sexual encounter, whether it's a hookup or FWB or even a date, is gonna, potentially inflict violence on them. And I just think it's so important to actually just be nice to other people, even if let's say it's just a one night stand. Okay. Before I launch into the whole topic of intimate partner violence, I wanted to check with Nish or anyone else on the chat today. Do you have anything to share, either relating to the topic of substance use or alcohol use during sex, or even the topic of just being nice to other people during sex?
Yeah, I just want to add that actually when it comes to BDSM, they have scenes, they have play sessions. What they do is they actually more than what other people realize is they actually have to be totally sober. They call it safe, sane, consensual. And even for myself, I actually feel that this need for more, this need for like smoking, alcohol, caffeine, sugar and all these things, anything that we are highly dependent on, I think is really important to recognize it for what it is and heal ourselves of all these dependencies so that we can be completely aware of what is going on, because it is when you are aware that you can actually feel and like for instance, like numbing gels and all these things. People don't realize, like sex by itself is already a form of ecstasy. So if you have more and more and more, you actually I think it over time it inhibits your ability to feel. You become desensitized. Okay. Carry on. I don't know. I think I'm rambling.
No. Whatever you're saying is super important, right? The ability to be aware of what's going on. Because the thing is, if you are not aware, as in you can't actually take care of yourself during the entire activity. It's so critical, so crucial to actually be aware of what's happening in whatever form, right? So just want to open up the floor once more. If anyone has any inputs, whether it's on the topic of the using drugs or alcohol during sex, or the topic of just being nice to other people during hookups or things like that, or yeah, any other topic that you're interested in covering before we move on to the last topic of intimate partner violence. No? Okay. So, the last bit. Let's correct that myth. Everyone thinks that sexual violence only occurs when you meet strangers, when you go for hookups, when you go for one night stands. But unfortunately, statistically, we know that as in quite a huge proportion of sexual violence does occur amongst people that we know. Right? Oftentimes it's these friends with benefits, or it could even be our dates, our romantic partners. Does anyone have anything to share with respect to that before we
Yeah, so as far as right, research literature has shown that violence actually happens with people that we know. Sorry, there's a typo below. And people who don't look like abusers, people who say things like, oh, they were so quiet. So it's really important to watch out for each other. So also another thing is, when we talk about violence, we are also talking about the interlink with mental health and how this can lead to other things like depression, substance abuse, STI, bruises and cuts. I think what happens is when we've gone through enough in life, trauma from childhood and all these things, then we kind of like, give up. We allow ourselves, we exchange our bodies for sex, for love, and we allow ourselves to be abused because we don't know how to love ourselves more, or like stand up for ourselves. So it's very easy to say you shouldn't do this, but you have to look at the person as a whole, as like what is their past.
Definitely. This whole idea of like recognizing the person as a holistic person, of his past, his present, what he's going through, just everything. So important. But yeah, anyone else? Thoughts, experiences, personal stories on experiences of violence amongst people that you've dated,
Yes.
friends?
So I just want to add, when these kinds of trauma happens, sexual violence, or other kinds of other violence, a lot of us just want to sweep this under the carpet. We might deny it, we might repress it. It might come up later on in life. And so it's not just what happens now, it's also what happens after. And so I'm a big advocate for healing.
So what can healing look like, Dr. Martha, in your experience, or anyone who has healed from the process of violence and trauma?
Anyone wants to share about the healing process? Like what has worked for you? You can type in the chat box.
Acceptance. For mine, it was definitely social support. If my friends weren't there, I don't know how I would have coped.
Niche, anything? Like if someone has sexual violence in their life or trauma, how do you think they should heal themselves?
So I tapped into the chat box. I said acceptance because I think I feel like that is like the most basic first step to take after it happened, because it's not like a scar is gonna heal and be like completely gone. I'm like, my gosh, like my life is like perfect now. No. So I think being okay with what happened, and not say being okay with what happened, being okay with realizing like, okay, yeah, this is something that happened, and accepting like the facts. I think that's like the first step to like healing lah. At least that's what it is for me, basically.
Yeah, I
And
agree. It's a very big part of it because we go into denial. That's one of the first stages. So acceptance, grieving, shock, anger, all these things may come up. So I like what SY said, community, friends, going for counseling and any other modalities that can help. Actually, movement helps a lot because the trauma gets stored in our body. So whether it's walking, dancing, running, doing it with the intention of letting go, shaking your body helps. Even like self-talking, like, hey, it's not my fault. You know, the world is such that it can be unsafe, and not being so hard on ourselves, being compassionate, not blaming ourselves and saying, why am I so stupid? Why am I always like that? Reflecting on it and making certain resolutions like, okay, for the next 6 months, I'm going to maybe take it slow and just focus on myself first. Like having these kinds of contracts with yourself can help you to get back that sense of control. Although a lot of people who have gone through sexual violence in their lives actually fall into isolation. They actually isolate and alienate themselves from the world and society because it has become a dangerous place and they just don't know how to deal with people anymore. So there is a time for everything, a time to be by yourself, and also a time to come forward. It cannot be that we just close ourselves up from the rest of the world. Yeah. So I have some resources and I have just put them into the chat box so you all can look at it if you want. And we will also share this later. So SY, any last words? I'll let you take over.
no, I think it's so important. What you just mentioned, the idea of taking the time you need, but also just being cognizant of the fact that you are not alone. You don't have to fight this battle yourself, right? So reach out when you're ready, but you don't have to reach out until you're ready. Just don't take it upon yourself and like blame yourself and tackle the entire issue by yourself, because the thing is, it's not healthy for anyone to have to face this kind of traumatic experience by themselves. People are there for you, whether it's there are people there for you, and those resources that Dr. Martha has just shared is so important. I want to acknowledge that in this session, I think all three of the facilitators, we are a bit choking on our own words because I think all of us are speaking from personal experiences just as much as we are coming from a very professional standpoint. I personally admit that this is my potentially most unnatural facilitation because a lot of these memories and experiences and difficult thoughts are coming out even as we are sharing about it. And I'm sure that this is a shared experience for Dr. Martha and Nish as well. So I just want to acknowledge that all of us are going through this difficult conversation together. I'm so glad that you are willing to actually join us, whether you have actually managed to share your story or not. I think it's a start to a bigger and more important conversation that needs to take place, whether it's within the cishet community or within the LGBTQ plus community. I'm gonna pass the mic over to either Dr. Martha or Nish, whether you have any last words before we close off.
Yeah, so thanks for being so articulate in summarizing. Yes, definitely there's a lot of awkwardness in this session for myself. Things are a little bit all over the place. So what we can do, I think, as allies of people who have gone through violence, I want to normalize it. Every single one of us, by the time we reach adulthood, have had some kind of violence, trauma. It is actually more common than we think. I think it's the shame around all this that makes it even harder. But in reality, it's actually so common. So as an ally, as a supporter of somebody in your life, listen to their stories, don't judge them, ask them what support they need, don't give them support, don't force support onto them, don't tell them you must, you should go to the police, don't say things like that. Just ask them, and what is it you need from me? Just ask. I think that is the most important thing. And doing regular check-in with them, even just sitting with them and spending time with them and just showing them that they are important.
Definitely. Shall we let Nish take the last words?
I don't have anything else to say. I think these two said everything I wanted to say already. So I guess I just want to take this time to thank everybody for being here, sharing this space. And just, thank you lah. Thank you for today. And make sure you take care of yourself, self-care, make sure you're all good when you're leaving this space lah. Yeah.
And please reach out to any one of us if you need any additional support. So Dr. Martha has shared her contact information just now, and of course, if you are within the GBQ community and you would like to speak to someone who's also from the GBQ community, please feel free to reach out to myself or Nish, or you can reach us over SG Rainbow's Instagram page, or you can always email us at sgrainbow@gmail.com, and we are always here to support any of our community members who might need any form of support or help as much as possible, as long as it's within our means. Yeah.
Okay, I just want to say one last thing. Even all those microaggressions is aggression towards our LGBTQIA friends. Every single day when they open up social media and then they see all these sarcastic comments about it's against nature, things like they are sexually damaged, that's why they are like this. Like, our LGBTQIA friends have to live through it every single day of their lives. And it's so important that we not perpetuate that and be the one who adds to the violence. So microaggressions, micro insults, how do genitals fit, things like that. And so even with the good news of S377A being repelled, it sounds good on the surface, but underneath there's more trauma coming forward because people are talking about them, policing their sexuality and saying that they don't deserve to get married and things like that. So I think being an ally of your friend extends to being educated and inform yourself so that you can better support and speak up as a non-LGBTQIA person. And let's not forget that the majority of the world is made up of people who identify as heterosexuals. Just because we are in the majority, we are in a position of privilege. It doesn't excuse us being mean to other people who feel that they are just born differently. So all this suppression and all this untapped potential in being somebody who is being policed and being discriminated continuously day in and day out does take a toll on their mental health and does not allow all these amazing, wonderful people to shine and be their best self and to display their talents and their abilities. Because if they are not happy people, then obviously they are not going to perform optimally. And so the world has lost so much of beauty and talent and contribution to making the world a better place. Okay, there's like macam like pageant queen answer, sorry.
Is there anything else to add? I promise I'll let you take the last word.
Last.
No more words already, no more words.
Okay. This is our
Okay, I'm going to stop the recording. Thank you everybody for being here. We will hang around for anybody who prefers to talk without the recording.